Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the feedback loop. We're going to be talking about crowdfunding and pre-orders, the good, the bad, the why not, and all of that sort of wonderful stuff. But before I really get into it, I kind of have to make some sort of a differentiation between crowdfunding, pre-orders, and pre-purchase, because these are all sort of different things. Your crowdfunding is the idea of paying for a product before it's built. This is much earlier in development. This is your Kickstarter, your Fig, all of these different groups. Pre-orders, of course, is telling a retailer that you are going to buy something, and sometimes you give them a deposit, but usually you can get the deposit back. And you're promising that you're going to buy that game when it comes out, and they're saying, great, we'll take your deposit and we're going to make sure there's a copy of that game here for you, ready to go on launch day. Digital pre-orders, a little bit different than that, but you know, we're neither here nor there. And pre-purchase is actually buying the whole thing in advance, right? So this is not just a deposit. It's not something you're gonna, you're giving them a promise to pay later. You're actually paying now. So a good example of a pre-order is buying a game on Amazon. You say, I'm going to order this game, and when the game ships, or within a couple of days before that happens, Amazon is going to bill your credit card or PayPal account, or maybe they don't use PayPal actually. They're going to bill your credit card, and they're going to then ship you the game. So I want to talk about pre-orders first, and I've got a couple of comments from people on YouTube and various other bits and pieces that actually brought up some good points that I kind of want to talk about. Jonas Kaufman on YouTube, for consumers, pre-orders are a crappy deal. It just feeds into the hype culture, which, as we've clearly seen, this is where the sarcasm begins, leads us all to be reasonable and thoughtful people who respect each other's opinions, and never ever leads to game evangelists attacking someone who dares give a 7 out of 10 to their most favoritist games ever. So obviously we've got sarcasm and Jim Sterling memes. But this is a very particular and valid point on the topic of pre-orders. What pre-orders do is feed off of everybody else, right? When you're doing that pre-order, when you're seeing the YouTube trailer that says pre-order this game, and you get all of these extra little bits and nonsense that goes along with it. This is all about hype culture. This is all about getting people excited for something that they have never played. Another comment from Ranger True saying, I don't really like pre-orders. They're giving money and promising it to a product that you haven't touched and have only seen the most polished and specific moments of the game. And that's all of those trailers are built around exactly that. It's what's known as a vertical slice. It's the same thing as a demo of a game as well, right? A vertical slice is the developer has selected a very narrow, very particular piece of the game, and they've prevented you from going anywhere else, right? So you can see exactly that. I remember when I was spending some time at BioWare, and they were doing the Jade Empire demo for E3, right? None of the stuff, like the area and the things that you deal with in the demo, none of the stuff was actually from the game itself, though. Not from the campaign, because they didn't want to spoil any story and all that, but they spent a long time working on that demo to get that ready to go, that vertical slice, and build on those pre-order numbers. But what pre-orders do, and the reason why companies go for pre-orders, is actually for business finance. And this is something that a lot of people don't really understand. And that's also why I wanted to kind of separate between what's the difference between a pre-order and a pre-purchase. The industry does not operate on pre-purchase. Some things, yeah, you've got to buy outright in advance, but most of it is pre-order. Most of it is a promise to pay later. So when you see people talking about they're going to get your money early, right? And they want to get that money much earlier in development. Well, they're not actually doing that. Right. When they put up a pre-order for a game at GameStop, EB Games, Walmart, Best Buy, pick your poison. They're putting up something to gauge the market interest and something that they can use when they're doing their quarterly reports. Right. When they get their report back from Best Buy that says, here's how many pre-orders of this game we got. When they get their report back from Amazon, here's how many pre-orders we got on the collector's edition. Here's how many we got on the regular edition. they can start to plan out how many copies they need to distribute out to the different areas, right? A lot of these pre-orders, and you'll notice this when you take a look at, again, the same sites, you'll see a pre-order date that actually has a release date that hasn't been announced yet. Well, how do they know what that date is? They're just making it up. Well, they're close. They've heard from their rep that, you know what, go ahead, put down October 1st. It's no big deal. But them opening up that pre-order early allows them to send that information to Best Buy, or from Best Buy to Electronic Arts, Activision, whoever, to their distributor, saying, we've got pre-orders for 20,000 copies across all of our stores. We need pre-orders more heavily in this store, and this store, and this store, and this store, because these are the ones that have the higher numbers. And so on the flip side of that, Electronic Arts gets all of that pre-order data, and they get to say, okay, we know that there are going to be this many pre-orders. And this is where it kind of bleeds into one of the next comments here just a little bit, is that they know what the interest of the game is, because people aren't very likely to cancel a pre-order. It is a lot more difficult if you have one person who has pre-ordered a game, to have that person get their mind into the idea of canceling that pre-order. They have to actually get out of the house, go to the store with their receipt, cancel everything, and then go back home. It's a hassle. It's a pain in the ass, right? It's one of those things that just reduces the likelihood that somebody wants to go and actually do that. They've already bought it, right? In their own mind, even though they haven't actually paid for it. If they've just paid a deposit or something along those lines, in their mind, they're already invested in this product. So the last comment on pre-orders that I wanted to read is from Hypergrip on Patreon. He mentioned this to me in the backer chat in Discord, and he's one of the most verbose typers that I've got. Steam will not run out of keys. While you as the player usually get a couple of in-game goodies and maybe even a small discount, pre-orders vastly benefit the publisher-developer and not the consumer, or the customer rather. If you pre-order a game, you're invested and all kinds of psychological effects kick in. You're likely to encourage others to see the game in a positive light, even if it's not out yet. You're more likely to ignore criticism. And even when the game releases and it doesn't quite hold up to your expectations, you're more likely to gloss over it to justify your expenditure and evangelism to yourself. And that is absolutely true. That's part of what the pre-order culture is all about, right? The whole idea of the console war and pushing the pre-order side and all of this all feeds into the same sort of psychological stuff. But at the end of the day, when you build that, or you boil that back to what does the company need? What is Electronic Arts interested in? It's when they go back to their shareholders at the quarterly meeting, the quarterly conference call to talk about earnings, they need to be able to have good forecasting in place. They need to know what they're likely to be spending. They need to know what things are going to cost 6 months before they have to deal with that cost, 3 months before they have to deal with that cost. All of these things, I mean, these are massive, massive ships that take an awful long time to turn. It's something that I've said before. They need to have some kind of forecasting data. And that's what pre-orders are. Pre-orders, first and foremost, are a forecasting piece of information. They allow the company to plan for how much money they're likely to receive. Because, of course, they can go back and look at their whole company history and they can say, all right, well, we had a pre-order of 100,000 copies for this game. We ended up selling 400,000 copies. Right. The next game, we had a pre-order for 50,000 copies. We ended up selling 200,000 copies. We had a pre-order for 1 million copies. We ended up selling 5 million. And when you plug all of those numbers in together and you factor in things like genre, you factor in things like the market analysis on how big the different markets are, a company can predict pretty close. Not exact, because of course nothing's exact. Sometimes games turn out to be shit, like we'll say No Man's Sky, for example. But they can predict, based on the number of people that have pre-ordered a game, how many people are likely to buy that game as well. And that's very important when it comes down to dealing with shareholders and all of that kind of stuff. So what's dangerous about pre-orders, though, is from the consumer side, and where this becomes a little bit of a concern, At least in my opinion. And this is, you know, I try to deal in fact as much as possible, but of course, you know, I've got my own opinions about these things too. The thing about pre-orders that has always bothered me and has always been a bit of a problem is that they used to matter. They used to be, I'm giving you money so that you hold the game for me. And the last game I stood in line for a pre-order was, I think, the Diablo 3 Collector's Edition. I needed to guarantee that that company was not going to sell my copy of the game because I needed it. I wanted them to pre-order that game and hold my copy. But in order to incentivize people to continue to do these things, right? And of course, it's still, you know, it did happen when it was retail as well. This is not necessarily new, but it's gotten a lot worse over the last little while. The pre-order bonuses have become a much bigger deal. Something like the Assassin's Creed games, where there is no version that you can buy of the game that actually has everything. If you want all of the little cut-off pieces of content, you have to buy the game 2 or 3 or maybe 4 times to get all of it. This is the problem. This is the part that bothers me. What I don't think that is reasonable. And my argument used to be that they're taking this content and they're cutting it out. They're saying that we're gonna take this, let's say it's a weapon skin, right? Or a particular quest or something along those lines. And they're cutting it out of the game so that they can sell it as an added little bonus to say, you should go buy this game from EB Games. Okay, well, if every different game retailer has an added bonus, did you really cut it out? Or did you just plan right from the beginning in your expenditures that you were going to create all of this pre-order extra added nonsense that really doesn't change whether or not the game's any fun? You know, that's the problem. That's the thing that has really started to bother me. And one good example of something else that was the dangers of where pre-orders were going, and luckily they got shut down, was one of the Deus Ex games, right, that Square Enix did. They were talking about the idea of this pick your pre-order tier kind of thing, and the more pre-orders that people got, the bigger the tier, the better that the rewards got for everybody, right? And they got slapped for it. And rightly so, because that's hogwash nonsense. Absolutely nonsense. So that's pre-orders in sort of a nutshell. I have always had an issue with it on digital platforms because what am I pre-ordering? Your packets of data? Why would I give you a promise to buy something? Why would I not wait? What benefit is there to me? And the only real exception, and I will totally grant this, and especially for people that maybe don't have a lot of money, is places like Amazon where you get $10 off if you buy it early. Okay, I can get behind that. You can still cancel it, but yeah, that's pre-orders. So what about crowdfunding? So we've got things like Kickstarter, we've got things like Fig, whether you've heard of them or not, and I'll explain a little bit more, but crowdfunding essentially is me as a company coming out to the audience as a whole, the gaming community, and saying, I don't have the money to make this game. Here's how awesome it's going to be. And I'm going to show you a video and some pictures. I'm going to show you, you know, the character classes and the weapons and all of these different things that I have these great ideas for. And I'm going to ask you for money. You're going to give me money. And that money is going to change hands in a number of different ways. So something along the lines of Kickstarter, right? You've got reward tiers, right? Patreon operates a lot this way as well, where, fine, I'm going to give you $5. Well, that's just a nice big thank you. I'm going to give you $15. Okay, well, you're going to give me a copy of that game when it ships, maybe. I'm going to give you $50. You're going to give me a copy of the game. You're going to give me a t-shirt. I give you $100 or $150, $200. You're going to maybe put my name in the credits, right? Include, like in Thimbleweed Park, you might include my phone number in the phone book with a little auto-recorded message that I put together for you. And as the tiers get larger and larger and larger, what's being promised increases rather dramatically, all the way up to things like, we're going to fly you down to the studio and you're going to come out to our launch party but it's going to cost you 10 grand to do that. So you better really want to meet the developers, because that's not cheap. So that's Kickstarter. Then you've got something like Fig. Fig was a company that was set up by Tim Schafer and a bunch of other folks, which takes the whole idea of Kickstarter and it says, you know what, we would rather treat this like the stock market. So, but we also want to kind of dip our toes in that Kickstarter thing. So we're going to allow any campaign, and they're actually are officially licensed by the securities commissions, to take investments, proper investments for a share of the company, buying stock. And they can also take contributions, which is the Kickstarter model sort of thing, where you can give money to them. Now, I haven't taken a look at a lot of the campaigns to know whether they do the reward tiers kind of thing as well, but I suspect they probably do. So these are kind of two different models of how crowdfunding has been set up. And the reason that Fig came to be and why it came to be when it did is mid-2005, the Security Commission in the States, Securities Commission. So securities are when you're buying stock, when you're buying financial instruments of another company. There was a ruling that crowdfunding could, up to certain limits, be allowed to be done online, where you could buy and sell stock online, and other people could, become an owner or part owner in your company. And that was a really neat change. And so then Fig came along, they decided they were going to do this, and then they've had a couple of successful campaigns. But what you'll notice, and what's really interesting about the whole thing, is that if you take a look at the number of campaigns on Fig versus the number of campaigns on Kickstarter, there's a very, very wide range of difference here. Kickstarter has thousands of campaigns. Fig has 10, maybe less, only like a couple active at a time, if that. Like it's orders of magnitude. Kickstarter is huger. And so one of the questions that's worth asking when it comes to something like Kickstarter and crowdfunding is why is the difference so big between the two? Well, it's because Kickstarter has no standards, and is a very dangerous place to be, very dangerous place to invest in. So let me back up and talk about why people fund projects. I mean, a game goes up on Kickstarter, there's going to be multiple reasons why somebody is interested in it, right? You've got things like, maybe they just like board games and they think that board game's a really, really slick way of doing things. Could be just a great sales pitch, right? Maybe they like the developer, maybe they like the franchise, right? This is a lot of things like the different Obsidian ventures that have been done. And then, of course, there's hype, which is your Star Citizen, right? They raised millions upon millions of dollars and then went on to do their own crowdfunding on their own website later on, raising even untold more millions. They're over $80 million now, I'm sure. I can't remember. That might have been a while ago. They might be over 90 million now. I have no idea, right? And one of the other reasons, and this becomes far more important a bit later, is the rewards that are involved. Is actually one of the reasons why people will give money to a project. So what I want to do, I want to read another comment here. This is from Mr. Whitehawk that was on our Overwatch game earlier. The line between developers who need Kickstarter and who are abusing it can be pretty hard to define. Developers for the Banner Saga, they were able to fund the second game in their series, and they released it on their own. But a lot of people that were fans of the first game didn't even realize that the second game had released, and it was just vastly underperformed on the first. So they went back to Kickstarter for the third game in the series, and in large part because of the marketing exposure that they would get by being a Kickstarter project, right? Being a Kickstarter crowdfunding campaign. They had the money to fund the game themselves. They didn't need Kickstarter to do that. They had made an awful lot on Banner Saga 1 and not amazingly on Banner Saga 2. Saying they didn't need to, but it certainly helped them build a larger product, and it arguably helped the consumers who missed the marketing of the second game. So this is one of the things that has kind of bugged me about the whole Kickstarter crowdfunding thing. right? We have all of these different reasons why somebody would back a project. But we also have a whole bunch of different reasons why somebody would put a project up on Kickstarter, right? You have things like the most obvious, which is, I want to make a thing, and I do not have the money to make the thing. So if I explain the thing really, really well, I make a good video, I make an honest video, you know, a very emotional appeal. I'm a game developer, I'm an indie developer, I don't have a lot of resources. I want to make this game, I need to make this game, but I need your help to do it, right? That's pitch number one. Something like the Banner Saga, now, and this is something that I'm not particularly well aware of, but this, I know that this stuff does happen. We don't really need to do this, but you know what people really like to do? They really like to hype up Kickstarters for things that they used to like. Something like Thimbleweed Park, right, is another good example. You have a certain brand equity behind the name Ron Gilbert, right? He's the guy that did Maniac Mansion, Monkey Island. Like, there's a lot of heft behind him. The idea that this man, who is effectively one of the industry legends, you know, from my childhood at the very least, could not find a publisher to make a point-and-click adventure game is absolutely absurd. 100% absolutely absurd that he could not find somebody to front him the money. Tim Schafer, for God's sake. Maybe they don't get along anymore. I don't know the story, but this is just absolute nonsense. So he goes to Kickstarter. Well, why did he go to Kickstarter? Because Kickstarter shared his game for him. It marketed his game for him. As soon as people found out, oh my God, this guy's doing this game, you got to get on here and back this Kickstarter. All of a sudden, you've got thousands and then tens of thousands of people that are so excited that you're getting back into the game industry and doing something current that they want to put their money down. And as soon as they've put their money down, this is a lot back to that earlier bit about pre-orders and how there's a lot of psychological things going on in the brain. As soon as you've promised to buy something or put some money on it, well, now you're going to share it more often, right? And that's one of the second ones. The third, and this is where it gets a little bit crazy, is when a AAA developer decides they're going to create some kind of, shall we say, indie studio arm. And I'm pretty sure, I really should have verified before I started doing this, that it was Square Enix that had done one recently, where, well, we're going to sort of publish the game, but we want to get a little bit of help, right? So they're going to get people invested even before the pre-order phase by having their own Kickstarter for something that is owned by a company that very clearly has the money in-house and they're able to do it themselves. And the last reason why somebody will do a Kickstarter is because they know that they can't get a publishing deal until they can prove to the publisher that gamers want their game. So this is an awful lot more like, again, back to the same pre-order kind of stuff about the idea of data transfer and saying, here's how many sales, how many pre-orders we've got. Here's the indication of the size of the market and the, you know, how badly the market wants this product. Kickstarter's the same way, right? You look at a game on Kickstarter that has a budget of $1 million, right? And it's a very big, you know, a crazy thing. Star Citizen was an excellent example of this, a perfect example of this. What they were asking for in Kickstarter was nowhere near the amount of money that you would actually need to make what they were advertising. It turns out they made a ridiculous amount more, and now they've gone, you know, total feature creep nonsense, and they've expanded the story and everything about the game into this ridiculous level. But what they asked for was not enough. That's just how this stuff works. Okay? Games that are reasonable in size cost $10 to $20 million to make or more. So you make a Kickstarter because it shows that you've got interest from the community. That makes you a bunch of money. You go to the publisher with that bunch of money. You say, hey, look how much they already gave us, right? All we had to do was tell them about the idea, and they opened their wallets and they threw dollar bills at the screen. Publisher looks at that and says, hey, yeah, that's not a bad idea. How about we take 60%? here, we'll write you a check for the rest of the money you need to fund this. You're going to pay us back that money. We'll take a chunk of the profits, and we walk away at the end, right? So the unfortunate part about that is that when you look at something like Kickstarter and Fig and all of these different crowdfunding sort of platforms, a lot of them are stepping off points to something bigger. And Fig is a little bit different. By actually going the legit investor route, they've taken a bit of a different turn, because there are some more rules about how that works. You have to actually disclose financial information and things along those lines. But with Kickstarter, there's none of that, right? With Indiegogo, there's none of that. All you have to do is have a good idea and be able to prove to Kickstarter that you're a real human being, that you actually exist, so that if there is some kind of fraud, they can take and direct the police at you, because of course they're not going to do anything about it. So you have roughly four different reasons why people set up a Kickstarter campaign, and only one of them is the original reason for why Kickstarter got popular in the first place. The idea that I'm a struggling indie and I cannot make this amazing thing, but if you help me out, I can make this amazing thing. Right? That's what Kickstarter was founded on. That's what crowdfunding itself was based on. And that is where crowdfunding is both the most dangerous and the most rewarding. Okay, that is where we get Undertale and games like it, is by supporting somebody that is a bit of a visionary, a bit of a nuthouse, because all good creators are, right? They're all just a little bit nutty. They have to be. That's what makes a good creator. By supporting those people, you're going to get a high percentage of failures, and you're going to get a low percentage of absolutely cream of the crop stuff that comes out of it. That's the beauty of Kickstarter. That's the beauty of crowdfunding, and where a lot of it is kind of lost in the mix, you know, because we've been so inundated with crowdfunding campaigns over the last couple of years. We've had crowdfunding campaigns by companies that their last crowdfunding campaign failed. Well, we're going to trust you the second time after you couldn't manage the money the first time? Why would we do that? And then for some reason, people went and did it anyways. Now, one of the things that is a valid sort of question, it was asked by Mr. Chet Manley on YouTube, saying, do you think that people who backed a Kickstarter campaign are entitled to refunds if they request it? And if they are entitled to refunds, does that mean that they're customers or investors? Now, Kickstarter is very careful when it comes to the word investor. They really push that away. They have no interest in being an investor group. They have no interest in dealing with any of that kind of nonsense. But at the same time, they have no interest in being a store. So Kickstarter is saying to everybody, and Indiegogo is a similar thing, we are just a platform that allow other people to tell you about their amazing thing, and we're going to take our little cut of money, and run off with it after they're done. They don't want to sell something. They don't want to deal with investors. But the end of the people that set up the Kickstarter, on the other hand, there is an element not of investment so much, more of consumerism, more of products. Now, there has been some debate back and forth about what does a security really mean, right? What is securities, as in buying stock? What does that genuinely mean? If I'm giving you something that is of value under the proposition that at some point I'm going to get something of value back, right? There's not really gambling, but the stock market does work on kind of a gambling sort of thing. But I don't think that that's really going to have, much in the way of merit. Really what we're talking about is something that you're buying. And so it's worth asking, is a crowdfunding project selling you something? Well, not the game, because they come right out and they say, you might not get this game. We're going to try and build this game. But what they are selling you is the backer rewards. You're going to get a free copy of this game and a t-shirt, a physical goddamn thing. Not just a digital product that may or may not, a physical t-shirt. We can even show you what the t-shirt looks like. They've got a picture of it on their Kickstarter page. Right? Or we're going to give you an art book, and we can show you what the cover of that art book looks like. It's an awful lot more like a product, isn't it? And so if somebody doesn't deliver those, and there have been lawsuits on this front, talking about fraud for people not delivering products on their Kickstarter, you got to be really damn careful. And then to take that even further and go down the route of income tax, right? And I know this is a little bit of an aside, but if you have a reward that goes along with your backer tier, okay, that reward, you're selling an object. The tax system looks at you and says you're selling something because there was an exchange of goods or a promise for goods in exchange for money. If they just give you money at the $5 level and you're not actually going to get a backer reward, in the United States, unless I have totally missed my mark on research, and you can feel free to check this, that may actually classify as a gift and would be untaxable income. Isn't that slick? Not a lot of people mention that part. So, are they being sold? Well, of course they're being sold, right? And if you were to talk to a farmer that sells their wheat while it's on the field, because that happens all the time, you're going to sell your stuff in advance, right? Well, you're still expected to give them the stuff when it's finished. There is an element of product here. And so to answer Chet's question, I say yes, absolutely. Right? At any point, somebody should be able to ask for money back on their Kickstarter legally because you have not provided me a product. Now, I will say that probably should be based around, you know, what the promises were. So we're going to give you this reward by November 2013. Okay? December 2013, absolutely, you should be able to ask for a refund. And it's become a very, very dangerous sort of thing. So I want to read another comment really quickly here. Andreas Aronson on YouTube. Another wake-up call is that I've found my hype for a game long gone when it's finally released. So many backed games I've not even installed after getting my key. I just have no motivation of playing them after so long. And so this is a little bit of a dichotomy between the idea of using Kickstarter as an advertising platform and the issue that you can really only have one launch. And so I guess it depends maybe a little bit on how big your Kickstarter actually ends up being, how many people get it. Because early access has this problem as well. When somebody buys something in early access, by the time the game is actually released, and there have been a lot of them that just never release, right? You look at things like DayZ and all of these other battle royale zombie bullshit nonsense, right? Why would they ever release? Releasing doesn't do them any good. Nobody's going to buy it at release that didn't buy it before release, right? So why bother? Why bother ever actually finishing the game? It's nonsense. And people in the review community will often review a game that's in early access or take a look at it. But then when the game actually releases, I think it was it Lego Worlds fairly recently that came out of early access, and hardly anybody covered it because it wasn't new anymore. We'd already heard about it. A lot of people had played it. What's there to talk about, right? You lose that marketing push afterwards. And that's what we're talking about here. The idea that you would lose your hype by the time the game actually comes out, yeah, that's an issue. And that may end up being the fate of something like Star Citizen. If they're going to give you piecemeal the game the whole time along, well, when it finally comes out, I've kind of seen what it's got. I've played the dogfight thing. I've walked around in their little persistent world stuff back when it was buggy and it wasn't really whatever, right? Well, there is the possibility that the game may not do nearly as well because they have so many people, like a good chunk of the market that they're looking to sell to has already bought in, which, you know, does raise the concern that maybe, just maybe, there's no reason to finish it. But that would just be a conspiracy theory. And I don't tend to subscribe to those. So to close all of this up, because I've been talking for a ridiculous amount of time, pre-orders have bothered me for a while. Ever since we went from the idea of needing to actually lock in your copy of the game at the retail store to giving money for a piece of content that does not in any appreciable way affect how much you enjoy that $60 game or whatever price it's going to be, right? Let's not pretend a skin has ever mattered. Pre-ordering a game just doesn't make sense. There's no logical reason why you would do it, except if you can get a genuine dollar value discount on buying that game. If you can do that, great. I understand. If you're just doing it because you like the stupid little bullshit, then you're part of the problem. Crowdfunding, on the other hand, you have to be really careful. You have to start asking yourself a lot of the same questions. And this is what a lot of people aren't doing. They see a great, cool looking product and they say, great, this is going to be amazing. They get themselves all hyped up and they give them some money. But they didn't really do any work to look into, okay, how's the company doing? What have these people been working on before? What stuff are they showing? Are they showing maybe like a playable build? Do they have a demo of some kind, or is it just a video? Now, if it's just a video, is it just a video of, like, does it actually have in-game sort of stuff? Maybe even, you know, if it's rudimentary and early, fine. Is it just concept art? Has this game even been started? All of these sorts of questions are the kinds of questions that you would ask if you were investing in something. You're going to ask what the finances of the company are. You're going to ask how far along the product is. You're going to ask when they're expecting to release to market. You know, all of these sorts of questions you're going to pick up on and say, what's going on here before I give you my money. Giving your money to somebody on a dream is a huge mistake. And I like Kickstarter. I think it's a good idea. I think that there is some really amazing stuff that we've gotten off of it. And it has so much potential, both for good and for not. And unfortunately, as with many things, we are going to see more failures than we're going to see successes. And that's just kind of how it goes. So when you're pre-ordering games, maybe, if you can, stick to discounts. Don't pre-order anything else. It's damaging. It causes us problems as gamers. It's giving away nonsense for no reason. When you're going to crowdfund games, do a little bit of research. Look into the company. Look at what the developers have done before. You know, do they have a pedigree? Do they actually have stuff that they've worked on that's really genuinely good? Are they showing anything of value? Maybe even send them an email and say, hey, you know what? I'd really give you I'd love to give you $100. You know I'm not going to make or break your Kickstarter, but you're not showing us anything of value, so I can't do that. Might make them think twice. So this has been an episode of the Feedback Loop, which is an awful lot of fun. I prepare a little bit before these videos. I get some notes on the screen and I get some questions and comments from people that watch some of the YouTube videos that I do. It's just nice to sit around and just kind of chat about some topic or other for, oh God, 45 minutes, give or take. And they're getting longer and longer as time goes on. So the way that this is going to work, this video goes up on the channel for the Patreon folks later tonight or tomorrow, depending on how quickly I can get that sorted. It'll be up on the channel publicly for everybody on Saturday. And on Sunday, on the news wrap-up, you're going to see a bit at the end that says, hey, if you enjoyed this feedback loop sort of stuff, get your comments and questions in for the next one. Here's the topic. We'll let you know what's going to be coming up. And what I would suggest for people that are watching this one is if you'd like to see a particular topic covered in the next time when I'm doing the feedback loop on, again, next Wednesday, 7 p.m. MST, unless the world is burning or something, feel free in the comments down below. Go ahead and drop your suggestions for what sorts of topics that I can talk about. You know, I've got a good list so far and we're moving along. So for those people on YouTube, cheers, thank you very much. And for those people on Twitch, I'm going to show a little bit of the sexy brutale.